So fellas, you ever noticed a person that has food or drink all over their beard? Doesn't that make you cringe? They're thinking, yeah, I look cute. And you're looking at them like, look at this filthy animal. Fellas, we're not living in the Stone Age. Your beard shouldn't smell like goat cheese and look like a rat's nest. There's a veteran that took it upon himself to create grooming products for men. Listen, they smell amazing. They keep your beard nice and moisturized and looking sharp throughout the day. Rugged Bison has a line of handcrafted pomades, mustache wax, beard balms, and an online thrift store with quality brands and merchandise. All veterans and first responders get 20% discount. It's time to look and smell like a gentleman. Go to ruggedbison.com and order your handcrafted grooming products today. That's RUGGEDBISON.com.
Chapter 51.
You are now listening to the Chapter of the Architect with DJ Architect.
What's going on, my people? Once again, this is your homeboy DJ Architect. I want to welcome you guys to the Chapter of the Architect. This is Chapter 51, another special episode. This one, man, excited about this one. An individual that first time I saw the documentary on Netflix, I was blown away. But before we get into that, I want to introduce a returning co-host, Big Kenny Cannon, the place to be. What's up, Kenny? And a good friend of mine, first time here on the podcast. I'd like to introduce you, gentlemen and ladies, to Officer J. How you doing, Officer J?
I'm well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for spending your time on this St. Patrick's Day for your monkey ass.
Gonna get turned up.
That's right. That's right. And in the studio, we have, of course, my right-hand man, Big Sherm. He's doing some video this Sunday for this podcast. So, Chapter 51, guys. There's a documentary on Netflix called The 7-5. All right? The first time, I'm a huge documentary fanatic, man. If there's anything on war, Vietnam, World War I, World War II, I'm on it. Crime, I'm on it. And I pressed play. And for about an hour and a half, my jaw my eyes was just stuck to the screen. What were your first impressions of that documentary on Netflix? Kenny?
Man, yeah, just like you said, like when he started talking about how he first engaged in corruption when he pulled a drug dealer over.
Yeah, him being Michael Dowd, ladies and gentlemen. That's going to be the guest for Chapter 51, Michael Dowd.
So he's the star of this documentary because it's truly about how he became corrupt, how it started, and then it started with that stop. It seems like, and he just pulled over
the Puerto Rican mystery.
Right. Yeah, he had no license, no registration, no insurance, and he was just like, man, you know, I could let you go, but you got to buy me a real nice lobster
dinner or lunch.
And he gave him a stack or something like that, right? Yeah. And then from there, it was able to trickle down to his partner because he gave his partner that $100.
Right.
And he's like, hey, this is just for you.
You know, it's funny because I was listening to another podcast.
For Artie
Lang.
Oh, Artie Lang.
Yeah, so Artie Lang interviewed his partner, which is Kenny Urell. Right. And Kenny Urell was talking about when he was a rookie and he went to his first precinct and they had some old-time cops. The sergeant was there. The old-timer asked him and his buddy for $1 each. And he came back with a bunch of beers and he goes, here, drink. And, you know, they were taking what you would call like an hour break. And he comes back with beer. He drinks one beer, him and his buddy drink one beer, and they're getting ready to go back out, you know, to their post, their beat. And the older officer says to him, I think it was a sergeant that says to him, hey, your dollar bought you more than one beer. Sit down. And both of them, he said for the 8-hour shift, they just drank beer with the sergeant there. So it kind of gave you an oversight of how the behavior within departments were back in those days. What were your thoughts on the documentary, Jay?
You know, these guys were like, I want to be a cop and I want to be a good cop. And once they showed up to the 75, they were like, holy shit. I want to be a cop, but I want to do awesome shit and make a lot of money.
Well, not a lot of money. I don't think they were getting paid a lot, but
Well, not from the department. They were
of
making
course, by
money
their
hand over fist.
side gigs. Yeah. That documentary is pretty awesome. I probably watched it a good 4 or 5 times. If I'm bored, I'll just pop it on. And I always said to myself, you know what, I'm gonna get that guy on a podcast one of these days. And sure enough, I was able to get a hold of him, and he's gonna be here with us this St. Patrick's Sunday, guys. So I hope you enjoyed the podcast. And here he is. All right, ladies and gentlemen, on the video conference call right now, I have the one and only Michael Dowd. Mike, how are you?
Good afternoon. How you doing, guys?
We're doing well. Listen, I want to thank you for your time.
Top of the morning.
Yeah, I know. Are you Irish, by the way?
Yeah, about 98%. The other 2% you can't see.
Well, thank you for spending this Sunday morning with us, man. Appreciate it.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, Mike. So, the first time I was telling the guys, the first time I saw the documentary, I was sitting there with, just blown away of how well that documentary was done. Tell me about, the making of the documentary. Obviously, the producer or the person who made the film, they reached out to you, right? How'd that work?
Okay, so I'll tell you how it actually took place. It's an interesting story. So I was sitting in the car with my soon-to-be ex, and her phone rang, and she hands me the phone and says to me, it's Jeff, your agent. And I hadn't heard from Jeff in about 3 years. I don't know how the hell he got her number. Long story short, it wasn't my agent. It was the director, Tilla Russell, found her number on the internet and then called it looking for me. She figured I gave my number to somebody else. And I says, how the fuck did you get her number and to get in touch with me? And long story short, he reached out to me and asked me and told me he was doing a documentary about the Mullen Commission hearings. He says, which I was an integral part of. I said, yeah, okay, yeah, we agree with that. He says, then we'd like to do a documentary about it. In fact, we already are doing it. We just want to know if you want to have some input into this thing, because we're doing it with you or we're going to do it without you.
Right.
And you know how that goes. If someone does a project without you, it's never got your best light in mind. Mm-hmm. So I said, no way am I doing anything to do with the Mullen Commission. My life is peaceful. I'm living a healthy, good life right now, and I don't need my whole past being dredged up. He says, well, we're going to do the documentary, about the Mullen Commission. So I'll just be aware that it might come up. I said, well, why don't you come out here and we'll talk? So he flew out. I picked him up, put him in the car. I sort of took him on a tour for about an hour. And I told him probably about 5 or 6 hair-dropping stories, jaw-dropping. And he said he got on the phone with his producer out in L.A., who was a Jewish guy from Queens, who saw it. The Mullen Commission hearings, when he was 18 years old, was News One's first broadcast. And they were watching, he was watching at home, this commission hearings with me speaking, and he was, enthralled in it. So 20 years later, almost to the day, he starts this journey to do the project, and he's on the phone with the guy, and I'm sitting in the car, and he goes, you can't believe this one. Because, who am I, right? He goes, forget the last 6 months worth of work, which I had no idea. They already had 6 months in. He says, we got us a star. So, of course. John, what do you mean a star? Who's the star? He goes, you. I go, what are you talking about? He goes, we got us a star. Anyway, so we had a little negotiations, some terms at that point. And he said, yeah. And I told him, and I guess I'm my best advocate in many ways. Of course, I'm my worst advocate in other ways. Right. I said, listen, if you listen to me, you're going to have a story that will blow Goodfellas away. And he goes, yeah. And I told him the stories, and he's like, holy fuck. And it began. So that's how it began.
Do you feel that documentary was an accurate depiction of what actually happened? Do you feel at certain moments things were changed around and you weren't happy with it?
So it characterized the whole era of the 80s, essentially from the police and from the wise guy / criminal perspective. It characterized the 80s really, really well. And I think anybody that heard about the 80s or became either law enforcement or was a quasi-gangster in the 90s and the 2000s, and they heard about the 80s, they got a real good feel for what it was like by watching that documentary. So, I mean, I don't know if that answers your question, but on the flip side, me personally, certain things like, and I don't know, we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but like certain things, the ending was twisted a little bit about this kidnapping thing, because they don't really take the time to develop what took place there. The reality was Kenny was wearing a wire the whole time and actually pushing me into this. Of course, being a take charge guy that I am, they were able to get a couple of words out of a tape recorded conversation that sounded like I was in charge of doing something inappropriate. Obviously, putting some woman in the back of a car is not a good thing, and that's not what I'm given to do. But the documentary leaves you thinking, oh, wow, so Kenny sort of saved someone's life. But in reality, that woman was never in jeopardy, not by me, unless Kenny was, and she didn't exist. As it turned out, she didn't exist.
Okay. So let me give a backstory so the individuals listening to the podcast can understand what we're talking about. This documentary is on Netflix. It's called The 7-5. Michael Dowd, you were a New York police officer working at the 7-5 precinct in East New York, Brooklyn, correct?
Yes. And that's the precinct that recently became famous for the BJ in the car.
Okay. Now you were a police officer. You came up in that precinct, and throughout the documentary, it shows that you became involved with some individuals who were dealing drugs. You yourself at one time began to deal drugs, and you were convicted for racketeering and distribution of narcotics. That's correct also, right?
Correct, yes.
Now,
yes.
Let me ask you, man, prior to the sentencing, you agreed to testify before the commission, and you just implicated yourself. You didn't drop dimes on any other NYPD police officers. Did you get anything out of it? Like, did they cut you a break? Did they give you some time off for you, going out and divulging all this information?
So how it worked was this, and just to set the table correctly, when I was in MCC, New York, awaiting either a trial, a plea, or an escape, which that didn't happen. I was approached on 3 separate occasions by this commission formed by then Mayor Dinkins of New York to investigate the depths of corruption in police department. So what happened was they came to me on the first occasion and asked me to cooperate with them. And I said to them, for what? In other words, why would I cooperate with you people? I said, well, if you did this, we can't promise you anything. And so I said, so why would I cooperate? All you're going to do is have cops kill themselves. And in the end, that's the end result.
You're not going to get nothing out of it. Yeah.
And they're going to get nothing out of this, and I'm going to get nothing for it. I mean, everybody wants a little gain out of this. So anyway, I told them to go fuck themselves. All right? Then they came back again, and I told them the same thing. And then here's an interesting twist. They run an article in the Post saying I murdered 9 people. I'm under investigation for murdering 9 people.
Wow.
All right? Of course, that never happened. Right. But, news and anytime you desire to get, want to flush somebody out, you just print the fake article. They call it fake news. They call it fake news today. Right. And so they print this article about me murdering 9 people, and they got bodies, and they got cameras, and they got news reporters at the waterfront. They got news reporters at a forested area by my home and in Brentwood. I mean, you can't even imagine the scenario they set up. based on this lie, this news article that's a lie by Mike McAleary, who ends up doing all these articles to write a book about me. Anyway, so after this article hits the airwaves, the news and all this shit, I'm like, oh my God, I can never get a fair trial here. Because my plan was to go to trial and put every cop that I ever worked with on the stand and ask them if they ever saw me do anything wrong. So 360 guys were going to say no for two reasons. One, their life depended on it. Two, their freedom and job depended on it. So three different reasons they were going to say no. Right? So that was my trial gambit. The only one person that was going to say anything wrong was Kenny, because he already cut a deal with you. So that was my belief at the time, right? So I figured my odds are not like 98-2 like normal. It's like 60-40, and they weren't offering me any real good deal. They were offering me 25 to life.
Wow.
Feds.
Wow.
Okay? I'm like, who the fuck did I kill? I threw a few kilos around, whatever, but for Christ's sake. So anyway, so now I'm stuck with this, disaster. Now I murdered people. I got bodies all over the world. They're looking in the fucking Interpol for me. Who knows? So I end up saying, listen, I call my lawyer up. He says, well, just as a side note, Mike, I said, I want to sue these motherfuckers. They're putting me, you know how that is. We all want to sue everybody, right? And he says, just on as a side note, Mullen Commission called me again today, and they said that they'd go to before my judge with a letter of cooperation with them, if you are willing to cooperate. He said, Mike, we need a friend in that courtroom right now, or you're going to go and get really fucked big time. So I said, well, what can I do for them? That I said, I'm not willing to testify against anybody and put somebody else's life in the same position that I'm in right now. I said, that's not fair.
Right.
I said, I got to take my responsibilities. They said, no. We'll work it out where you don't have to do any of that kind of shit. Okay, so P.S., I set up a meeting with Milton Mullen, the head of the commission, and three of his wingmen. They come in, an investigator that's an ex-NYPD cop, Leslie Crane. You see the blonde that's yelling at me in the commission hearing.
The commission hearing, yeah.
And Joe Armeo is another guy there. Anyway, they sit down with me. They tell me, we don't want you to testify or give up anything. He says, everything has to be truthful, but we just want you to, what can you give us? I said to them, do you want you to teach you how to catch me? And they go, that would be great. So I laid out a way to catch me, and then they caught the whole 30th precinct. So I don't know.
Wow.
Maybe I taught them too well. I taught them too well.
Listen, the funny thing is that I got some good friends here in the studio with me for this interview, and my buddy and I, Kenny, we were talking about it, and he was explaining.
Not Kenny Urell.
Not Kenny Urell, no.
No.
So he was talking about how people well, Kenny, go ahead and state what you were saying, how people, what do you call it, the people that get into computers, what was the statement you said? That the government...
Right. It's just like how, like cyber hackers, right? They get into government databases and stuff like that, or they hack into a big time companies and stuff like that. Later to be hired by the companies that they hacked into because they want a better cybersecurity system or something like that. Yeah,
so that's kind of like what they did with you. They were like, well, he's got the format of, and let's hire him to, build the trap.
Let's hire him. I haven't gotten paid yet, motherfuckers.
Hey, listen, because we also got here an individual who's in law enforcement. His name is Officer J. And so throughout the podcast, all three of us are going to be jumping in and out, because these guys, they got a lot of questions for you as well.
I don't think I have any. Do I have any warrants out in California, Officer J? Just
not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you so much.
Hey guys, who wants to ask a question?
Well, shit, I'll start off. You guys don't mind? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I wanted to.
Who is this?
So this is Kenny, not
Kenny.
Urell. But I just want to commend you for your road to redemption. I took a look at your website and the podcast with Joe Rogan, and everything that you've been doing up from the movie till now. And it just sucks because in our society today, that just seems that there's no path to redemption, no matter how even small of a mistake someone makes. So I hope people get to see this and say, you know what, even though some mistakes might require a longer road to travel to redemption, but I think that people could see you as an example for that ability, the chance at a new and better life.
Well, you know, I'm glad you bring that topic up because, first of all, I'm not perfect. Okay, let's get that clear. I've made mistakes since then, and you know what? We all do. So we should all. I think, as in law enforcement, all of us in the legal profession, whether it's the beginning in law enforcement or all the way up to a judge, should understand that we all make mistakes. I mean, and some of them are regrettable. Some, you know. Are beyond reproach, but the reality is, we all make mistakes, and every day I make mistakes. I mean, just ask my girlfriend. But the point is that we take a situation, and you guys got to understand this, especially for law enforcement guys. Okay, law enforcement guys, they take the biggest hit in the world when they fuck up, because number one, they just gave up the family that they've come to know and love only. You know, that's the only thing that they've got in their life. When they become a cop, they get rid of everybody else they know around them. And the only thing you really have left is cop brothers and sisters, whatever you have in your life. You know, how many parties do you go to that are just cops, maybe some firemen and a couple correction guys thrown in there and that. So, you know, other than that, you know, and your father was a carpenter, so you know 3 carpenters and 65 cops. You know, and that's what we end up around, and then we end up, you know, being ostracized amongst our own, even family at times. So we really take the biggest hit. You know, if a Wall Street guy screws up, they get him a job teaching, like you said. You know, how to catch a Wall Street thief. You know, he's a great guy. You know. Meanwhile, you know, he robbed, you know, people's pension funds and stuff, you know. Then they kill him. Then they kill themselves, and they think, oh, he really wasn't a bad guy. He just $800 million. You know, I mean, you know. So, and I'm not judging anybody on what they did. What I'm trying to say is, we're most critical of ourselves. Now, if you're in law enforcement, this is my thing. If you're in law enforcement, you know a buddy. A damn good buddy of yours that you would have done anything for that got jammed up. You got to know him. Kenny? Or the other guy?
Yeah.
Officer J?
Mike, how are you? This is Officer J.
Yeah.
I want to say that I read that your academic acumen through high school and whatever else was very, very high. And you could have been a lawyer, a doctor, an accountant. What was it that drew you into law enforcement?
It was a mistake. No, I shouldn't say that. The mistake was that I had no real mentoring in those other fields, and I was at an age where I was a very impressionable moment. Right, I was 21. Right. I was going to either finish college and try to get into an accounting position, or I was going to go into the police academy and get a job and go get married. You know, at that age, back when I was in my 20s, you get married by the time you're 25. Otherwise, you're a swinging bachelor. You know, right. Today they don't even talk about it till they're 30. So I was trying to make some very serious life decisions at the ripe old age of 21, and I went to my accounting professor, who I actually admired the guy, and I thought he was brilliant, and I loved the way he taught me. And he looked at me and he said, "Do you want to sit behind a desk for the next, 30 years, or do you want to be out in the street, maybe making a difference?" And I went, "Oh, that's a no-brainer," because my personality and energy, it wouldn't have worked behind a desk, that's for sure.
I hear you. I'm the same way.
I might have been the next Enron scandal. Who knows?
I hear you, Mike. Hey, Mike, listen, I grew up in New York. I grew up in Westbury, Long Island. Did you grow up in Long Island?
I was born in Brooklyn, but grew up in Brentwood. They call it Brentwood, Long Island now.
You know, it's funny. When I grew up in Westbury, a lot of the family friends that I grew up with, my parents' friends, as time went on and Westbury started to get, real, hoodish and very dangerous, a lot of them started going out to Brentwood. This is, 86, 87. But
Yeah.
I want you to get into and talk about the crack epidemic that destroyed New York back in 1984 in the mid 80s. Because I remember I was in junior high in Westbury, and that would be walking on crack vials, the clear tubes with the red tops, and crack was everywhere. Can you go into detail about being a law enforcement officer in East New York, one of the most dangerous places in New York at that time, with this crack epidemic running rampant?
So it was actually odd, funny, humorous in some ways because, cops, we find humor in everything, right? So I get called to, now recognize this. It's 83, 84 to 85. I can't have the exact date in my head, but it was probably closer to 85. Probably in the fall of 85, I get a call to the corner of Fulton and Crescent. And we show up there, and there's a male Hispanic. The allegation is he's selling drugs. So we pull up, we go toss the guy, nothing. And yet he's talking to me like, he couldn't. I go, what's up? He goes, he was at the dentist. He couldn't talk. So I go, dentist, huh? And listen, I'm a little naive. I don't have any reason not to believe the guy. He can't talk. I just tossed him.
Yeah, but it sounds like he got crack vials in his mouth.
So I go to him. I go to get in the car, and I go, He's like smiling. Yeah. So I go, what? Something's bothering me.
Uh-huh.
So I get out of the car, and I grab him by the throat. Bang! And I go, open your fucking mouth.
That's right.
He's trying to swallow the fucking crack vials down. I got him by the throat. He can't swallow us. So I go, spit him out. Well, I don't know what it is. I go, spit it out. He's spitting out these fucking vials of plastic shit. He had his whole mouth lined on both sides.
Wow.
And he was trying to swallow, right? But I went to the dentist today. So now you're talking 1985, right? No, I don't know what it was, but I knew it can't be. Right. What are you hiding your mouth for, right?
Exactly.
I figured that out. I'm a real tough cop.
Yeah.
I figured out that. But you got to realize we didn't even know what it was. Like, we didn't know what it was. Like, it looked like soap or fucking rocks in a jar, Back then, we were used to Peruvian fucking pink shell, delicious flake, that stuff, It was like, what is this?
It's sort of like bath salts, but without the same intensity to get people hooked.
Yeah. So there you go. It wasn't a bath salt, but it looked like a bath salt.
Right.
And sure enough, it was like the first. I mean, we had him spitting them out, but we didn't know what it really was until we get a call back 15 minutes later that he's taking the sewer plate off to get the stuff back out.
Oh wow.
So now we know there was some value in that shit he was spitting down. That rock salt had some real value in it,
Hey, so
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kenny.
Oh, so I was gonna ask, like, talking about this whole crack epidemic thing. You stated in Joe Rogan's podcast, and I agree with it. I really do, that drugs should, or drug use, I think is how you stated it, should not be a criminal charge, or because the whole war on drug thing was kind of bullshit.
Let me be 100% clear for your audience. I am against all drug laws. I'm not lying. I'm not even being. I don't think anybody should drink and drive. I don't think you should shoot up and drive. I don't think you should snort cocaine and drive. Although that I'm not so sure about. But you certainly shouldn't be under. Well, I mean, I can see you can probably drive better in some cases, right? But the reality is, the reality. Well, I know I did it. So the reality is that the reality is that for me, I watched the whole thing. Right. When I first got to East New York, it was really known for heroin and $50 pieces of cocaine. Okay. And then as the crack epidemic took over, there was no more heroin people really left. They died off of the AIDS, right? That we constantly got ourselves checked for. We kept checking ourselves for AIDS ourselves because you don't fucking know what you hit up.
Right.
And it was scary as hell. I mean, every case we went on, they would, if it had an AIDS patient that was known, because they put it in the computer, and a known AIDS patient is at that location. You were like, you stand down the block and say, "Is everything okay?"
Yeah.
Whoa, that's how scary it was back then, And but the reality is that for me personally, like a person could take a 45 and put it in their mouth and blow their brains out, they don't get arrested, But if a guy wants to snort a line or shoot some heroin or they get arrested. I mean, that's insane. Just think about it.
Yeah,
you're allowed to cut your wrist.
It's non-violent, right? It's they're just doing it to themselves. They probably stay within their own little realm, their house, and all that stuff. So
you got a bunch of guys snorting cocaine, sitting around. All they do is smoke cigarettes and snort.
Yeah.
Now the problem is they got to go out and buy it and create that can be that can be where the element of crime and danger to society takes place. But individually. Right. And listen, I don't advocate it, by the way. So let's not get that fucked up.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
I'm sober, but my point is the whole industry in law enforcement is designed around fighting this scourge. Don't get me wrong. People are addicted. My family members have been addicted. I've been accused of being, a substance abuser, and on and on and on.
Right.
Sober 2 years this month. It'll be 2 years I'm sober again. I was, 13 years sober.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
So do you think?
So we all wrestle with those things, but I don't think I belong in jail because I wanted to snort a fucking gram of cocaine.
Right.
I just sorry.
So do you think if drugs were legal and not considered, drug users were not considered criminal, do you think you would have been able to do what you did at that time if drugs were legal?
No, not at all. Never.
You don't think you would have been able to?
So to that point, and you guys deal with a lot of stuff on the southern border. I know that from the San Diego area and everything, the influx. For me, my personal view of this is it's like they did to the booze and the moonshine in the 20s and stuff like that. We've made narcotics / drugs an industry that's so profitable because of our criminal laws that are designed, to interdict it. I mean, listen, you guys know, if you're locking people up and putting them in jail because they just sold an 8-ball to their friend, and don't get me wrong, that is a crime. I don't minimize that. But the fact is, the guy wouldn't be doing it if he wasn't making a significant profit on it. And he wouldn't be risking his family's future and his own future if there wasn't a significant profit involved.
Profit from it. Right.
Hey, Michael, this is Officer Jay.
Exactly.
Going back to the drug thing, what role, if any, did cocaine and the alcohol use play in your transition to the dark side? And, did it numb your conscience and give you the balls to do a lot of what you did?
No.
What it do to you?
It made me feel fearless and it made me feel like God.
Right.
But the reality for me personally, my transition to the darkness was because the department was so hateful towards us as individuals. Maybe I wasn't cut out to be a police officer. I don't like having to follow orders. That's number one. But number two, I don't like having to follow orders that are ridiculous. That's really more where, so I have that in me to be, I'm a resistant guy. Okay. Right. I don't like being told what to do. However, if it makes sense and if I can't find a better way around it, I'll follow your rule. And that's just who I am as a human being. I don't know that that's a character defect, maybe.
Yeah.
So what happened to me was in the police department, very early on, I made a very significant arrest. Actually, it wasn't. It was a bullshit arrest. It was for a dealie. The guy fell asleep at the wheel. I tell his story ad nauseum. He fell asleep at the wheel, parked on the sidewalk, foot on the brake. I thought he was dead. Long story short, he wakes up after I reach in and put his car in park. He starts screaming and yelling at me. Back then, I was a young rookie cop. And, you know, I was a little intimidated, right? You know how it is when you first walk up on someone. He's the man and he's about 65 years old. He's yelling at me, "What do you want, you motherfucker? You woke me up." I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry, you know, but the reality is, I'm trying to I'm saving the world here. I'm saving the world. Anyway, and so when I lock him up for Dewey eventually, in the meantime, he offers me $1,500. Take what you want. So I decide not to fucking tell anybody. They tried to offer me the 15 large. Don't forget, at that time, I was clearing $206 a week. And I'm like, I'm not going to tell anybody about the 15 large.
Yeah, 206. That ain't shit.
Yeah.
$206 a week?
A week.
I wasn't really there for the money, although it's nice. You know, I was there. I wanted to be a cop. I wanted to do all the good shit. And so when he offered me the 1,500, I said to him, you know,
yeah, I could imagine.
I'm not going to tell anybody. I said I actually that was actually the reason I arrested because of that. I arrested him for the D week because what was I? Who am I to tell you can't drive drunk? I drive drunk. I'm not going to tell you can't drive drunk.
Right.
I drive drunk.
Right.
Listen,
staying within that same realm of, you know, the police culture. Listen, you stated in the past that there was some point where you wanted to come clean, but the department's silent code of conduct, you know, it made it difficult for you to take that route. Can you tell us about that?
So this is one of my it's a difficult topic for me to talk about, but I talk about it with some trepidation because people begin to judge you, right?
Right.
So one of the things I've learned in life as a now 58-year-old man and grandfather, by the way, is that we make decisions based on what's less difficult at the time. So I just had a child. I was 5 years old. About 25 years old. I had my first child. And I got bounced to a Coney Island detail. And I mean, if we got the time, I can break it down. But so I get bounced to this Coney Island detail, and because they wanted me out of the East New York ghetto because I was robbing. They knew I was robbing everybody, but they couldn't. Yeah, but they couldn't prove it. So they sent me to the beach for the summer at the beach. That was my punishment. Was the summer at the beach. Anyway, it was a lousy summer. I just want you to know it rained every weekend, so it sucked. But anyway, while there, one of the few sunny days, and I'm not kidding. That's how poignant it was because there was so few sunny days in the summer of '86 that when the sun finally came out, it would be jammed quick as could be. Like in a half an hour, people would jam in the place. Anyway, long story short, I end up in a dispute with an off-duty New York City police officer over some nonsense, a lie on his part, because I had no reason to even say anything to the guy. Anyway, he ends up screaming at me, calling me a white piece of shit, all kinds of racial innuendos and whatever. And I'm like, listen, I'm in uniform. You're off duty, not in uniform. Let's tamp this down. Let's defuse this. Let me call the boss to the scene. You want to cry to him? Go ahead, whatever. Anyway, the boss shows up, who I actually knocked him out in the police academy. He shows up, and so I say to him, boss, this guy with his mouth and this and that. Anyway, the boss says, okay, everybody go home, shake hands, and say goodnight. Okay. 3 weeks later, I'm out sick, driving up and down the street that's right out here, right in front of this door. I could show you the building from here. You can't even believe this. Right across the street from this law office that I'm sitting in is a laundromat. And the laundromat, above the laundromat was the first real crack house in this area. It was right by the train station.
Wow. And
I was out on sick leave for, I was probably hungover. I don't know. Anyway, and you're not supposed to leave your house, that whole bullshit, right? But I was out. I just left the beach. I drove up Route 111 by my house in Islip in Brentwood at the time, and the Mercedes that the guy was driving, that the New York City police officer was driving, the Mercedes-Benz convertible that he was driving at the time, right? At $300 a week, okay? His Mercedes-Benz convertible was parked right in front of this door that I'm sitting in front of now. I can't even believe I'm telling this story. And he was walking across the street to go into that crack house. So, I mean, it doesn't take a fucking 22 years in the police department to put three things together here. The gold rope chains, the license plate that lit up on the Mercedes-Benz.
Right.
We call it he had the drug package going on. And he's a New York City cop. And I'm saying to myself, okay, look, I have a choice to make right here. They're trying to get me for doing dirty shit. And here's a guy who just yelled at me, tried to get me suspended, and he's parked his vehicle in my neighborhood 35 miles from where I work to sell crack in my neighborhood.
In your neighborhood. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I guess it's a little self-serving, and I'm going to take responsibility for my actions. But the reality is, I have no loyalty to this person. I don't know him. I've never done anything wrong with him. I've never done anything right with him.
Right.
So that whole thing about you never give up. Listen, I don't know the guy, all right? And he dissed me. I said, you know what? Let me make a call. But I didn't do that. The first thing I did was I went to my neighbor. My neighbor was on the job 28 years. He was a detective for 18 years in the 102 precinct in Howard Beach. Okay? And I said to him, Unc, he was my wife's uncle. I said, Unc, what do you think I should do? And I told him the story. And he said, Mike, I wouldn't turn on a cop for murder. He says, but the selling drugs, that's a little different. He said, you need to make the call. So, and I know that I was involved. So, here I am in a quandary, right? I was shaking down drug dealers. I wasn't taking their drugs and selling it at this time, by the way. I shook them down, robbed their money, and all that shit. And my partner did take some drugs home, so I'm not going to say that that didn't happen. My partner took some home.
Right. And
I did sell it half a kilo from Noriega, one time only. I mean, what are you going to do? It was Noriega. He didn't miss it. Anyway, so yeah, I was, you can see I was perplexed. I'm still perplexed today. But I thought, look, this is my chance to turn my life around completely and become a good policeman. Because now I have a child and a wife and a home. So you're thinking about your future, your family's future. You want to clean up. Yeah. I'm thinking about trying to do the right thing finally, After doing the right thing initially, now I got lost. And, they put all this pressure on me to either quit the job or turn it around. So here I am turning it around. They show up at my house after making the call. Within 30 minutes, they're at my house. I'm like, this is that fucking important? Turns out that this guy, he gave his weapon to a drug organization to do some money collecting in Manhattan on 125th and Lex, like 3 weeks earlier. Right after that incident that I had with him, like within 2 or 3 days, he had an incident in Manhattan. They ended up suspending him because his weapon was being used as the strong arm to do some collections in Manhattan at 125th Street. I don't know this. I guess I didn't read the paper that day. But anyway, long story short, they just want. This is what actually turned my life. I said to me, okay, so what do you want to do? They said to me, they want me willing to testify. I said, I don't want to testify against anybody. I said, I'm giving you the guy on a silver platter. He's over here selling drugs. This is his name. Figure it out. Tell Suffolk, you do it, whatever. They go, no. You don't understand. We don't care about him selling drugs. We just want to have that in the background in case he sues and gets his job back for the gun thing, being part of the collection operation in Manhattan. Yeah. If he gets his job back, then we want to be able to go after him again for being involved in narcotics out here on Long Island.
So they want backup ammunition.
They wanted some backup.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting in my house saying, they don't give a fuck about crime. They don't give a fuck about crime. They care about the job. So I'm like, you don't care that he's selling crack? No. We just want him off. Hear this clearly. We just want him off the job. So that's the message that was left me as they walked out the door. So I'm saying to my whimsical self, okay, I walked a straight line. No one, now for the next for the next months and months, felt like years. For the next several months, I walked a straight line. I'm doing the right thing. My partners all left. Everybody I worked with from that, when you see that picture of all those guys' faces in the documentary,
right?
Like
the poster.
70% of them had either left, quit, moved on to something else, left the precinct, went to Suffolk, went to Nassau, went to the courts. Can you imagine going from the street to the courthouse?
To the courts, yeah, it's got to be miserable. But now the reason why you guys left was because the 7-7 was taken down, and there were rumors, or you guys felt that they were coming for the 7-5 precinct.
This is correct, and that's why I was walking my little straight eights, like a little scared little bitch. I was being good, and I was doing my job, being good, and then one day I ran into this guy Walter.
Oh yeah,
I ran into Walter.
If somebody needs their neck broken, I'll break it for them. What do you say?
Walter's the big motherfucker.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll break somebody's neck if their neck needs breaking.
I ran into Walter, and he says to me, now he knows who I am. I don't know who he is, right? And I'm on a foot post because now here's a veteran cop on foot post, so you know what that means. I'm getting fucked.
Yeah, you're
right?
in trouble, yeah.
And they put me on the park on Van Sicklen between Hendricks, Blake, Van Sicklen to Dumont, and there's a park there. It's a nothing. It's a fucking just a park, and there's no one in it. And so I'm watching this park. So I had a routine, and this day I happened to be two of us at the park. Don't ask me why, okay? But it turns out there's a good reason. So I drive my car. Now, you're not supposed to take your own private vehicle to your foot post because it's just not protocol, They don't want you fucking driving around, banging chicks, whatever, selling, whatever. They don't want you getting in trouble. So of course, I take my car to my foot post. So I get out. I see this big fucking statue standing there, right? And he's 6'5", 300 pounds. And I go, what are you doing? He goes, I got post. I said, so I guess we're partners today, right? Why do we have two of us standing on a fucking post, right? That's unheard of in the ghetto. You're always by yourself on a foot post, right? So with that, I see a sedan. Back then the Plymouths, the 4-door Plymouth sedans.
Right.
Yeah,
there's a 4-door Plymouth sedan. I see a guy, look like a cop, like off the undercover cop or some shit. I give the guy a high five. He waves back. How you doing? I make a left-hand turn. I go down the block. I tell the big guy, says, hey, this building here, it's all crack houses. He goes, see this building over here? I go, yeah. He goes, they're selling crack. I said, yeah. What about it? You're telling me nothing. He goes, I said, this was my sector, dude. I lost it because of, I won't tell you why I lost it.
Right.
He goes, well, they're throwing crack out of that house. I said, and what do you want to do? Go buy some? He goes, no, I was thinking maybe we can go bust the place. I said, are you serious? He goes, yeah. I said, do you know who the fuck I am?
Yeah.
He goes, I know, your name is Mike. I go, yeah. I go, what about that? He goes, I just got back from Coney Island because of this craziness. I said, I'm good. He goes, no. I said, do you really want to make an arrest? He goes, yeah, sure. Anyway, long story short, he goes to the spot. He puts a $5 bill in there. The guy comes to grab the money. He sprays him with the mace, right? So he sprays the hole with the mace. The guy takes off running. You hear, ba-bing, ba-bang, ba-boom. He's fucking hitting pots and he's flying. Don't forget they have traps in the floor. The boards are missing, everything. The guy ends up falling down in a trap in his own basement. Because he can't see. The mace hit him in the eye.
Right.
So we still can't get in the building because they got the steel diamond-plated door. Anyway, so I go, dude, I'm really good. We really shouldn't do this. He goes, well, what do you want to do? So I said, here's what we do. So I pick a vehicle, license plate number 123 ABC. I 15 the plate. It comes back not stolen. The boss hears me on the radio. The boss comes over, gives us a scratch. His boss is done with us. The guy goes, Walter goes, what are we going to do now? I says, get in my car. We're going for a ride. I took him over to the bodega down. I took him to the bodega on Riverdale and Hinsdale for some burgers and some beers. And we finished out our tour. But here's the thing. Remember the guy in the car?
Right.
That I waved to?
Yeah.
That was Tromboli.
That was the Manhattan investigator that was trying to get you and that was pissed off that Suffolk got you guys, right?
No, that was Joe Hall. Tromboli
was the guy that was following you, and he goes, you don't directly follow him, you pick him up on the highway. No, I got you. I got you.
Yeah, so Tromboli was following us. So what happened is, in the ghetto, you just open up your car window and throw everything out, right? You don't need a garbage pail. The whole ghetto's a garbage pail back then. So, I mean, listen, I'm just keeping it real. I could tell you, I wrapped everything up neatly and put it in recycle, but I didn't. And so we threw the beer cans out the window, and what do you think happens to the beer cans? Tromboli picks up the beer can.
Oh, that's right, Tromboli.
I get called into a department, GO15s it was called back then. They read you your rights. They want to ask you some questions and basically have no rights in the GO15. And they said to me, I was in there for a beating that went down. So I covered someone's ass on a beating. And then he was my PBA delegate. I had to cover his ass. And then while I'm in there, they open your book up to November 11th, 1986. I said, what about it? It says, foot post, 63, end of tour. my memo book says, foot post, 63, end of tour at 8 o'clock. My tour ends at 12, but I took lost time, you know?
Right.
So I left there. So I said to my lawyer, I go, what can I do? I know I didn't rob anybody, so what the fuck, right? So he goes, what do you think? He goes, my lawyer says to me, describe your typical foot post. So I described. I get I 15 a plate. The boss gives me a scratch. I get in my car. I go get some beer and a fucking hamburger and hot dogs. I eat and then I go home early. I says, which is exactly what I did here.
Hey, Mike, real quick, so the listeners understand. When you say your supervisor gives you the scratch, can you explain that to the people who are listening? Because they're looking at you like, what? I know what you're saying, but people here know what you're saying. But what do you mean that he gives you the scratch?
Well, your supervisor is required to see you at your post or in your patrol sector during the course of your working day. So your supervisor, what they call a scratch, is when he signs your memo book that you were present at your location on assignment.
There you go.
So when I went over the radio to announce that I was what they call 15 running a license plate.
That was your affirmation that you were there where you were supposed to be.
Now I was out, present at a location where the boss could actually come find me right now.
There you go.
And he knew he might not find me later anyway, so let's go find him right now and get it over with. And that's what he did. It was a routine. They knew when I was 15 on the plate, it was time to come scratch him. So they would scratch me, and then I would go for my burgers. So I told the guy the same story, my lawyer, and he goes, that's exactly what you did that day. Very good, Officer Dowd. He says, the only problem was this. I go, what? He goes, remember those beers you had? I go, yes. He goes, when you threw them out the window, the sergeant in Internal Affairs picked them up.
Yeah.
I said, oh, that's nice. I said, well, they weren't beers when I threw them out my window.
Right.
Hey.
So he goes, yeah.
Oh, so I was going to try to.
Walter was in the car with me during that.
So I was going to see if we could try to move into this direction of corruption in police departments still exists today, I would think, and most would think. But how do you think the style of corruption has changed in today's police department? Like, what is today's Michael Dowd getting away with on the force? How are they doing what Michael Dowd did today?
I tell you, it's certain. Listen, where there's a will, there's a way. I think we would all agree with that, right?
Sure.
I
yeah.
think that I would think that they're far more. Anybody that's doing what I was doing is far more aware of surveillance. So I would think that in some way they're using it to their advantage. And I don't know specifics, but I know that people are still engaging. And not, by the way, let's just be clear. It wasn't like it was. Let's keep it honest.
Yeah,
it wasn't
different.
It wasn't like it was. Police departments have become much more professional over the years in their approach to the whole aspect. I don't think that internal affairs has become the place where most aspiring cops want to go. I would have to admit that they still don't want to be in internal affairs. In fact, when I was interviewed several times by NYPD internal affairs, they didn't even like their job, okay? So it's not something that's liked. However, it becomes a career path for many bosses. So, but I think, personally, much of your crime today in police forces is actually being conducted in different languages. And I don't mean
What do you mean by
Spanish,
that? Yeah.
I don't mean English. I mean Eastern European, I mean Arabic, things of that nature, because those societies are very difficult to penetrate.
You're right.
And I actually know it for a fact that's where a lot of criminality. Now, I'm not saying that there is a lot of criminality in law enforcement, because I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that's where a lot of their concerns are, and I know that for a fact.
So I'm assuming you probably still have friends in law enforcement, so you still have feelers out there that, possibly give you information.
Yes, and they don't always admit it because they're not allowed.
Absolutely.
Sure, yeah.
Truly. I understand.
They can't like Michael Dowd even though they love me. You know what I mean? It's like it's the way it is.
Right.
Which is part of the discussion that we should engage in it. Not about me personally. I'm okay. But when cops fuck up, they do come back to society. What happens in many cases is they become really fucking bad because no one will hire them. So that's an area of very grave concern, because look, if a mechanic screws up, he goes to the next garage, right? So I know you guys might not want to go down that rabbit hole, but it's something that we're going to be discussing. I believe I already did a major article with the Blue magazine. I don't know if it's good. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but it's supposed to be the cover in April. And it's about exactly what I just discussed with you briefly,
right,
about how cops get jammed. Like the guy that you want to work with is the guy when he gets jammed up that no one wants to know. What happened here? You hung out with him yesterday in the bar till 4 a.m. Today he gets jammed up and everyone's like turning their back when he walks in the station house. Look, it's really not a good look, to be honest with you. And when I was a young cop, I ran into a lot of guys back then in the 80s that would get jammed up, and I treated them as best I could.
Right. Now,
I didn't put them on my shoulder and march them down the St. Patty's Day parade, but I treated them as best I could always. Usually they turned up into, cops. They don't have the fucking life skills. They have cop skills. So they would tow truck drivers, limousine drivers, security work, construction guys. They turn into, if they can swing a hammer. A lot of guys can't even do that. So
what you're saying is you had empathy.
Yeah, of course. And I always looked out for them as best I could. And I run into that. Believe it or not, some of my best friends today are retired cops.
Right.
Hey, Mike.
Not guys that were.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, not guys. They were active when I was a police officer, but when I was a cop, they all waited for their retirements before they could be friendly with me again. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but and I take it. I'm good with that.
Right.
Officer J again. Internal affairs for a place like NYPD, I bet they wish they could just throw all their phones into the ocean. because there's people calling constantly trying to rat out officers for anything they can. Tell me, about the internal affair division of NYPD at the time, and were they proactive or reactive? And did they tend to live more by the blue code back then, or were they involved in some of the same shit?
So, from my perspective, like internal affairs back then, they were not. Let me just say this. Let me say to categorize. They were not eager to hurt a cop.
Right.
Okay. So, because, and I'll tell you why. Because of, is the proper word, spurious allegations that were always made back then. Back then when the drug game was in every corner of every city street, it was every day someone made an allegation of corruption against a cop.
Right.
There might have been a 30% chance that they were a good allegation, but it was the 70% that would come up bad. And that, so every time it was alleged that a cop shook someone down, it must have been overwhelming to be in their position to have to investigate. So what they would do technically is they'd set up little traps. They've set me up 3 or 4 times. I mean, they don't even know how to do that. I'm like, okay. And one time they got mad at me because I let the guy and the drug stay.
Wow.
They called me back and said, of course they didn't say, hi, this is internal affairs. They sent me back to the same location that the guy left the drugs there. Now they want to see what I was going to do with the drugs.
Wow.
I mean, first of all, explain this to yourselves if you know anything about law enforcement. They call me to the scene. I toss the guy. There's drugs on him. I let the guy go with the drugs.
Wow.
All right. Later on, they call me back to the scene because obviously I let it. So what I did is I let him go and I left the drugs. Right. They call me back to the scene, through a phone, and they're obviously across the street watching me, filming it or fucking binoculars on, and they go, the drugs are under the thing on the side over here. Let them go. Oh, really? And what color is this? When you give that much detail, I know that you're not someone hiding out. Oh, they're selling drugs on my corner office. So I can't stay on the phone much longer. I'm shaking.
Yeah. You have to have. Yeah, you have to have some kind of finesse. Yeah, you can smell it's a setup. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to go back and actually vouch for the drugs. I was so pissed off.
Hey, Michael. Listen, I want to get your mindset at this particular moment in your life. What was the breaking point that made you commit your first action of corruption? Like, tell me mentally, what were you going through? What were you thinking for you to say, you know what, let me ask for this lobster lunch with a Puerto Rican mystery? Mentally, where was Michael Dowd at that moment for you to say, you know what, I'm going to cross this line? Yeah.
You know what? It was scary, too. I just want to be clear. It wasn't something like I was like so gung-ho and like, what happened was, and I shared this once or twice, and I don't remember if you guys were aware of this. I made a car stop over by the Riviera. Was it the Riviera? No, the Showboat. The Showboat up on Jamaica Avenue by Hemlock, I think it was. The Jamaica and Hemlock or something like that, right by the L where the J train lets out.
Right.
There's a pool. There's a public pool there, and there's the Showboat. Used to be the Showboat. It's not there anymore. And I made a car stop right there. I just came up, I think, Forced Foods or something, and I pulled over. Let's call it a mystery, and for whatever reason, I blew a sign. I don't know. I was a young cop. I was probably on the job 1.5 years at the time, maybe 2. And as I pull this car over, behind me is a fucking patrol car. I said, oh, well, we got a little backup. This is cool, And we're sitting in the car with the paperwork, and my partner, I guess, is writing a summons. I generally didn't write any summonses. And Sal, his name was Sal Chrissy. What a nice guy. A little odd, but a nice guy. Anyway, Sal and I are sitting there, and Sal had the insurance card and shit, whatever. He's writing this. I don't know if he had any paperwork, who knows. But Sal's going to write some summonses to this guy. And to my left and to my right, which is the passenger side, 2 cops are standing there in uniform. One guy's name is Terry McGregor, and his partner, I can't remember his name. He ended up getting arrested. Anyway, they're standing there with like doing a car stop on us. They're like, what are you guys doing? What are we doing? We made a car stop. No. We see that. What are you doing making a car stop in our sector? I said, well, we're Sector George, and it abuts his sector, So we followed the guy from. Here I am. I got to explain to this cop why I pulled the car over. Well, this is our sector, and don't be pulling cars over in our sector ever again. Like, otherwise, we got a problem here. Now, these kids, they're my age.
That's not like a jurisdiction thing, right?
Yeah, it is, but it's a beat, but they're the same department, but they're just being assholes about it.
Oh,
these are my criminals. You don't touch my criminals. Yeah.
So, the light bulb in my head said, this is really what it's about. Like, they want to control everything in their sector, so there must be about, like, money. It must be about money. It must be some, because why else would you give it?
Why would you give a crap? I understand, yeah.
Why would you? Yeah, this guy just fucking blew 3 stop signs and shot 7 people, whatever.
Someone would think, hey, thanks for stopping them. Yeah, less work on my plate, right?
Right. No one's going to blow through my sector without stopping. We got Dowd backing it up. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so boss hog, yeah.
Yeah, so the point was, this guy is protecting and stay away from all my shit. Yeah, he's protecting his territory.
He was the Michael Dowd of his sector. Yeah.
Motherfucker. Yeah, I wasn't going to go down without learning a lesson out of this or something, right? So I said, all right, so this is yours, so then that's mine, right? Okay, good. We got a plan here. So within a day or two, I pull over the guy with the mystery, with the Corvette with no license, no plates, no nothing. And I go, he's got a knot about this thick of hundreds in his fanny pack. Back then they had fanny packs. I still have one, by the way. And I love him, Anyway, so I said to him, you can buy me a lot. Basically, you got 1,500 in tickets at least, or I can take your car, or you can buy us a lobster lunch, because I wanted to make it clear that fucking ham sandwich, Yeah. And he left us a couple hundred under the seat, under the briefcase, and he scooted out of the car. Of course, I threatened to kill him if I ever see him. And it was my first shakedown. I'll kill you if I ever see you again. He goes, oh, yes, sir.
Hey, Mike, but you were following the template of that confrontation that you had with that other police officer in their section. So now you're following their template. You're thinking to yourself, well, this is the way they run their sector. I'm going to run my sector the same way. And if money can come out of it, then so be it, right?
So there's no reason that they would have been that hard on me if they weren't robbing people.
If they weren't getting a profit out of it.
There's no, because we're all cops here. We're all doing our job. We're issuing summonses and protecting the people and saving the world, right? Well, apparently that's not what this guy. I was like, okay, so we don't do that here. Oh, okay. Light bulbs.
Yeah, he was the king of his little sector, and then he gave you the blueprint. Yeah,
I am God in here. He was God in his sector.
And you were like, all right, well, yeah, and he kicked you in the teeth, and you're like, well, I'm going to go to my sector and be God in my sector.
Right.
I got you.
I learned something like that.
Mike, so I wonder, like, what you would tell young cops, I guess, these days, that are willing and or capable of doing what you did and saying, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to do what Mike Dowd did all the way until I get caught, then I'll just serve my 10 15 years, and then at least I lived that good life for that amount of time while I was getting away with it.
I would say, first of all, I would tell them, go look at a retired cop and go look at a jammed up cop's life.
Big difference.
That might hold them. like that, in a nutshell, that's what I would tell them to do. Go look at a retired cop, whether he got a 3/4 disability, whether he did his 20 years, whatever it is. Go look at his life today, and go look at Mike Dowd's life today. It's really, although I haven't, other than the gift of gab, I've had a nice life overall. But the reality is, I'm going to struggle till the day I die. Where most guys get the pension and their medical benefits for the rest of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah, guys. Yeah, go ahead.
You did your time in Manhattan, correct?
No, in Brooklyn.
Oh, in Brooklyn. Okay. So did you have to do, any kind of damage control on the inside leading up to your release to make sure there wasn't any debt or any unfinished business, so many years later?
So when I came home from prison, you're talking about?
Correct. Or while you were in.
Yeah, no. So the reality is, I lived my life debt free, even till, by the grace of God, till this day. I don't owe anybody anything.
So
my mother,
from the first day, right? From the first day you were incarcerated, you didn't owe shit to anybody.
No, in my mind, I gave a service to those people that were paying me, and those that I took their money from, I left them either with their drugs, or if I took their drugs, I left them with their freedom.
Okay, so it's kind of like a tit for tat thing. You take this, I'll take that, and we'll be square.
Yeah, we walk away basically friends, really. I mean, or that was one of I'm a people pleaser, right? I didn't want people mad at me.
Right. So let's
I
say
didn't want the guy not mad at me.
you take some dude's drugs and his money and his freedom, and now you're fucking somebody, and eventually you may be fucked in the end. So I see how it went.
Yeah. So anybody, like, I ran into one guy in prison that remembered me from the street, and he starts yelling at me. He was locked up on a tier with John Gotti, and I was going to the visiting room on 11 South. I was in 9 South, which is the whole segregation. And I was going to a visiting room on 11 South, and John Gotti and this guy Chris Moore were in the they'd be caged back in the housing unit, because I moved on total separation throughout the prison when I first came in. And guy yells out, "Hey, Dowd!" And I look up, and he's a black guy, little Jamaican slang. And I look at him, and I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Remember me?" And I go, And I go do my visit. I come back through the same way. They're locked up again. I look up, I go, "Chris Moore." And he goes, "Yeah, that's right. You remember me?" I go, "Yeah. What'd I do to you?" Right? Because now I got to survive, right?
Right.
He goes, "Nothing." I said, "All right." All right. So now the story is, 3 weeks later, he ends up in the hole right next to me.
Wow.
Shit.
And now I run the hole, right? And he's 4-pointed. He's got his belly chained and his legs chained together because he's a fucking whack job, right? So he's 4-pointed. He's got to eat by bending his head down to hit his fucking sandwich. So he looks at me, he goes, "Hey, Mike." Oh, I said, "Oh, now it's Mike, huh?"
So what were you put in the hole for?
Yeah, I don't really know, because he's crazy. Yeah, but he I'm suing these motherfuckers. Everybody's suing. I'm suing these motherfuckers. Yeah, okay. Yeah, the feds want to let me. They want to let me go home right now, but I refused. He says, "Time served." He says, "But I refuse because I'm suing him for $300 million. Okay, good. He did get 45 years. But anyway,
Wow.
Yeah. So his friend turned on him for machine gun killing he did. But so he says to me, "Mike, can you do me a favor?" I said, "First of all, you're the only motherfucker that didn't pay me." He goes, I said, you're talking shit about me on the TA. He said, "No, I ain't talking shit." I said, "You want me to call your wife for you?" Because he can't dial the phone because he's belly chained and shit, So he goes, "Yeah." I go, "You're talking shit about me with all your boys up there." I go, all you had to do was give me $200, motherfucker. I gave him a summons. I gave him a C summons. I let him go. He goes, I know. I'm crazy like that. I don't like paying nobody. I said, all you had to give me was $200 and I would have let you go, you fuck, you know? So he's like, yeah, I know. Can you do me a favor and please call my wife for me? So I'm not going to tell a guy no.
Right.
Fuck it.
Yeah.
I got to live with these guys, you know?
Hey, Mike, because we're running out of time here, man. So I'm trying to get these questions out as soon as we can.
Yeah.
Curly, what do you think are some things that the police departments now could set in place to deter corruption, if anything? What do you think?
Well, what they really should do is have training where guys, real life experienced guys, have come in to do the job well and then turn their life into a disaster like me. They should see more people like me speaking to guys, not guys in the academy, but guys with 4 and 5 years in the street, because that's when it starts. It generally doesn't start in the academy. And yeah, you can do some academy stuff with these guys, but you need a guy like me to walk in a room with 35 salty fucking guys and say, I know you guys are all badass and everything. What do you think you're talking to? You know, I wore my gun down by my fucking ankle. Okay. So, you know, I thought I was Wyatt Earp. Okay. But look what happened to me. You know, and if you want, you know, and I think if they had you guys have unit training and stuff like that, you know? So during unit trainings, they should filter guys through, you know, station houses, or, you know, if they have these little small conventions, they get together. Because the reality is this: if you don't keep it fresh and real, you know, everybody gets jaded. The street starts to talk to them, and then they lose their integrity. I don't give a fuck who you are.
You're right.
And, you know, a lot of it, you know, one of the other things is this: don't be a hypocrite, because people in the street know that you're a hypocrite if you are one.
Right.
You know, I know what it is because I did it. All right. And, but I'll be honest. I didn't lock people up for DWI and drugs. Okay. So,
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to be that guy. You know.
Right.
So when I ran to people in prison, they couldn't say, "Yeah, you stole my drugs and you used them, motherfucker." You understand?
Absolutely. Mike, do you find yourself in a lot of situations where police departments are booking you to have these dialogues and conversations with officers?
I would say to you that I've only spoken to 2 separate law enforcement agencies so far. And I did speak with the NYPD at length, and what they did was they were going to use me. I asked to speak before the academy, and they, instead of allowing me to do that, they took the footage of my interview and they interspersed it with the showing of the 7-5 documentary. You know,
That's
they're
not
really
effective.
You know what it is?
That's not effective,
it's not.
man.
Well, it's not. They got to see a guy sweat, you know.
Yeah.
And they you know, every day that they don't do that. Listen, one scandal in your police department is worth hundreds of millions of dollars in damage. Would we agree with that? Anybody?
All right.
Whether it's brand damage, lawsuit damage. You know, instead of, if they want to give me $1 million, I'll straighten it out. You know.
Hey, so Mike, you were talking about your time in the prison a little earlier. I was wondering, what do you think about your punishment? Do you think you served the correct amount of time? Should you have served less or more? How do you feel about it?
Well. So you guys obviously know that I'm anti-drug enforcement, and I don't mean that people should use drugs. I don't mean people should hurt others with drugs. Right. Yeah. So, but in the perspective and the perspective that I had, I saw guys getting life sentences for kilos of crack. 1 kilo of crack, it's a life sentence. Okay. Yeah, and these kids were 19. 20, much, yeah. They were 19 and 20 years old, and they were never going home. Okay. So, do I consider myself fortunate to be sentenced to a 14-year, 168-month federal sentence? In some ways, I do. However, according to the federal sentencing guidelines, that's exactly what I deserved. Okay? And I was actually enhanced in my sentencing guidelines for being a police officer and for possessing a weapon. So technically, if I took away the police officer and the weapon part, and I was just involved in drug conspiracy, I actually would have gotten probably a 10-year mandatory minimum. But I would have
But because you were under the color of authority, you were held to a higher standard, and they gave you the hammer.
Correct. Yeah.
Hey, Mike, do you think the 7.5 was your downfall, knowing what you know about the NYPD? Or do you think, being assigned anywhere, would have led to the same situation?
Well, I think that the era was probably the important part of it.
Right.
Along with some of my own character defects, which are I always wanted to aspire to be, as you guys led off with, a lawyer, a doctor, an accountant, somebody that was a bigger earner and had a better impact financially that way. So given that predisposition to want to be an earner, which put me into real estate very early, which thankfully to a couple of kilos and shit, I flipped some real estate. But the point is, and I make a little light of it, but only to be honest too. The fact is that I should have probably stayed in private sector and maybe gone to the stock market industry and stuff like that. Yeah.
Mike, out of all the things that you've been through, all the experiences, all the ups and downs, what was the scariest moment you lived through?
I would say, that's a tough question.
So many.
Yeah, I would say, when I think back, when I had to make the decision to confront that guy under the trestle, the elevated train, the L train, the J train on Fulton Avenue, that was a pretty serious moment. And as I look at the time, Mike, I was actually
tell us that story because I'm unaware of what you're talking about.
Well, it's in the documentary. It's mentioned. I had a guy put a hit on me.
Right. Oh, that's right. From La Compañía.
Sí. La Compañía.
Sí.
Pero yo no necesito para mío. So I went. I actually was contacted by Baron Perez, who told me they put the hit on me because I parked in front of his spot for 3 or 4 days, and then I paid some guys $1,000 to do the same thing for me. And of course, those guys wanted that job every week after that. So I was putting pressure on the guy because I didn't like what he did. He shorted me $700, and I was willing to pay money and just to show him you can't do that. That the money you gave me, the $8,000, which wasn't Diaz, by the way, but the $8,000 you gave me isn't worth it if you think you can disrespect me by shorting me $700. Right. So
yeah, because what's going to happen down the line if you're starting off bad business? What's going to happen down the line?
Exactly.
This was the cello guy, right?
No, this was cello. Yeah, he only had 28 murder. Yeah, no. He had 28 body.
No,
I guess it was easy for me to be number 29. I guess.
Now, Mike, are you guys looking to make a movie? I know the documentary's done. It's on Netflix. It's been on there for a while. I continually go back and watch it. It's entertaining. Whoever did it, the producer, the editor, well made. Are you guys looking to actually do a full motion picture based off the story of the documentary?
Yeah, well, there's a production company that's attached to Sony that they have 5 days to send me a check. Otherwise, I'm a free agent.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you're
5 days from now?
My life rights are owned by Sony.
Oh, wow. Okay. So they have 5 days from now, and then if they don't get a hold of you, then you get those rights to go shop your story to some other.
Correct.
Okay.
The highest bidder.
Do you currently still keep in contact with some of the individuals? I mean, obviously, you said you still talk to Walter and Chicky. What about Baron?
Walter, Chicky, Baron, and Adam. Adam and I are involved in like a semi-joint venture with cigars. We have a cigar business. We poke around. Plus, his family owns a tabacalera in not like his cousins. They own a tabacalera in the Dominican Republic. So they rolled up some cigars for us and put us into a nice little position with them. We don't sell many, but we sell some. Just to keep the brand and the name, the 7.5, alive, which it's been able to do.
Right. Now, off air, you and I spoke about a podcast that you're in the works with. Do you want to talk about and give some details about that?
Well, you know what? I wish I had all the sites and all that stuff up, but right now we're going to do a sizzle for a true crime podcast, and then we're going to shop it to some of the major podcast networks out there. In fact, we're actually going to do it specifically for one of them, and we hope that they get in a bidding war for it if it's done well, which I think it'll be done well. I think we come off well together here. It's a retired narcotics detective who's actually written 4 books. And he's actually writing mine as well, along with doing this podcast.
Oh, good for you. Good for you. What's going on with Chicky and Walter?
Chicky and Walter. Chicky, I'm a little pissed off at right now. I haven't heard from him since Thanksgiving, so I'm a little annoyed. Walter and I speak probably every 2 weeks, so we're all good. But I got to check on Chicky, see what's going on with him.
What's going on with Kenny? Are you and him? I know there was some discussions regarding the ending of the documentary and disagreements. Are you guys on speaking terms, or have you guys decided it's best to leave things alone?
Well, we don't speak any longer. Kenny, I think, and of course I'm talking about what I think he was, because of the fact that he was basically is a rat. He still lives with a lot of that connotation and guilt and defensiveness. I'm over it, but he seems to be angry at me that I come out of the shit smelling like, I don't want to say roses, but certainly not like shit, And, I turned lemons into lemonade, and he turned fucking his life into, I don't know what to say about it. I think he's got a decent, of course, I got him his pension. You know that, right? That he retired with a pension, and then he got in trouble. So he was sitting at home collecting a pension that I got him.
I understand. And
I didn't bang his wife, which I should have, but I didn't. So,
Mike, come on, Michael, come on. Hey, listen, I've been looking forward to this podcast for a while. I told the fellas, my partner in the podcast, Sherm, probably about 6-7 months ago, I'm going to get Michael Dowd on the podcast, and it happened. So listen, I want to thank you for your time. More so, I want to thank you for your honesty, because you really don't have to go that route. Thank you for spending time on this Sunday afternoon here on the chapter, The Architect. Is there anything that you would like to say, or any events that you've got coming on that the public should know about?
Well, you can always follow me on Instagram or Twitter, the Mike Dowd, and I have a cigar line and some T-shirts I sell now and then just to keep my gas in my car, because I do struggle on a daily basis in financial aspects. But it's nice to have a little support like that. And any support, just leave you with words of, listen, hypocrisy is ugly. That's what I'll say. Hypocrisy is ugly. And I want everybody out there to know that, today I live my life one day at a time.
Outstanding. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Chapter 51 of the Chapter of the Architect with Michael Dowd. Thank you so much. DJ Architect out.
DJ Architect.